Months of careful planning finally came together, and the fundraiser looked beautiful. The massive ice sculpture in the shape of New York State looked just how Sonia had described to the artist, and each floral arrangement looked elegant and beautiful as they spilled out the tall vases onto the tabletops. The event was a success, but instead of the usual feeling of pride and satisfaction, Sonia stood at the back of the ballroom with a weird yearning inside of her, watching with envy as the couple slow danced in the middle of the ballroom. The pair looking lost in each other's eyes as they held one another close and swayed to the soft romantic music. They were all wrapped up in each other, slow dancing like nobody was watching. Jasmine stepped over to Sonia, sipping her drink, then saying with a sigh,
I can't remember the last time I slow danced.
I can. It was back in high school with my ex. Sonia laughed at the memory.
That tall boy who came by the office a while ago?
Jasmine asked, giving her a look. You saw him?
Yup. Heard him too. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I was right there at the reception desk, and y'all was so loud. As soon as I heard him mention deportations, I was all ears.
Jasmine watched as Sonia's smile quickly faded.
You ever thought about getting back with him? He was basically begging for your number.
Nah, I'm happy that that's over. With him and my other ex. I'm ready to move on.
There's lots of guys at school.
Jasmine shrugged.
Maybe if you were a little more social, you could meet somebody there.
Sonia rolled her eyes.
I'm just saying, you always complain about not knowing anybody at Columbia, but you never kick it with any of us. All you do is go to classes, then leave campus afterward.
That's because I have to work.
Girl, that is not an excuse. I work too and I still make time. For example, what are you doing after you leave this gala?
Going home, Sonia said like it was obvious.
See? You calling it a night at 9:30 in the city that never sleeps.
Jocelyn shook her head.
The Black Student Union is having an event on campus. Come out and be social.
After seeing Sonia's hesitation, Jasmine added,
One of the most important parts of college is making connections.
I know. I'm just so tired.
I'll get you some coffee before we leave here, but you're coming.
Jasmine laughed, walking off. Later that night, when Sonia and Jasmine arrived at the dorm lounge, all eyes were on them. They stepped inside, decked out in their shimmering ball gowns and faux furs, while the rest of the students were dressed casually in jeans and polos. It was clear that everybody knew Jasmine, as she effortlessly moved from one group to another, chatting everybody like they were old friends. Something about Jasmine reminded Sonia of Yanni, her confidence and infectious personality that seemed to just draw people in. After a half hour, Sonia was done. Done with the fake smiles and awkwardly hovering around Jasmine while she chopped it up with her friends. So, with a sigh, Sonia plopped down on the lumpy little couch, ready to go. Her eyes scanned the lounge, moving over the faces of a bunch of familiar strangers. People she'd seen on campus, but never bothered to actually speak to. She shook her head, thinking to herself that this was no party. It was stuffy and all business, just like the galas, but without the champagne and good food. Just a bunch of students circling around each other like sharks, sizing each other up and trying to figure out who they could use to climb the ladder. When someone would wander up to Sonia to talk, all they seemed to care about was what her major was and what was her career path. And once they found out she was majoring in religious studies, they lost interest immediately. Jasmine sashayed over, still buzzing from doing her little social butterfly thing, and let out a little laugh.
Girl, you ain't never gonna meet nobody glued to the couch. You gotta get up and mingle.
I'm about to go,
Don't leave yet.
Jasmine said, then quickly waved over a boy with toffee-colored skin and shoulder-length dreadlocks.
Ishmael, come meet my friend.
Jasmine smiled. He smiled at Sonia, then said with a nod.
It's the girl with the ghost.
Both Sonia and Jasmine looked at him confused.
You are my comparative religion class.
He announced, then turned to Jasmine saying,
She was talking about how the spirit world is real and how she saw some ghosts before.
He nodded. Not ghosts, demons, she said in a low tone.
What are y'all talking about?
Jasmine's brow furrowed. Sonia sighed. The professor was trying to make it seem like the spiritual world was all folklore and myths. And I told her it wasn't. Told her I saw the stuff not drauf. Ish smiled.
She wouldn't back down either, even after everybody in the class laughed and looked at her like she was crazy.
Sonia shrugged. I don't care what those kids think. I know what I saw, and I'm not gonna shut up about it just because they don't believe it,
Good for you.
he said with a nod. Jasmine laughed a little, shaking her head.
All right, well, you two can discuss whatever that's all about. And Sonny, you're gonna have to catch me up on that a little bit later. 'Cause what?
Jasmine laughed before taking off.
Is it Sunny or Sonia?
He asked, sitting beside her. Either or. My nickname is Sunny.
You can call me Ish.
He gave her a nod. Then, making small talk, Sonia asked, You know any of these people?
Not at all. I just started a few weeks ago.
I just started this semester too. Did you transfer?
Nah. I started school a few years back, then took a break.
Sonia nodded, staring over into his deep brown eyes. Then Ish asked.
You from New York?
She nodded.
I can hear the accent.
I don't have an accent. She smiled.
You do.
He flashed a bright smile as his eyes locked in on hers. Where you from?
California.
Calais?
Nah, Oakland.
It must be different for you, living out here on the East Coast.
Yeah, it was at first. But I decided to stay here after I took that break from school. And New York has been my home for the last 4 years.
What did you leave school to do?
I'm a music producer.
Like Timbaland and Pharrell. He laughed a little.
Yeah, something like that.
Sonia and Ish were clicking, and for a minute, it felt like they were the only people in the room. Like everybody and everything had just faded out. Then Jasmine showed up with some girl named Rachel and disappeared quickly, fluttering off across the room again after dropping off the curly-haired girl. Rachel wedged herself onto the sofa beside Ish.
How do you know Jazz?
Rachel asked. We work together,
Oh, I was talking to him.
Rachel said with a smirk, then turned her attention back to Ish. Before Sonia knew it, Ish and Rachel were deep in conversation, and suddenly she felt like a third wheel. She tried to ease away, but before she could, Ish called after her.
Sonny, you leaving?
Yeah, I think so.
Come on, We was just saying we need to be more social.
He smiled.
Some of us are going up to Jasmine and Rachel's room. Come with us.
Sonia didn't want to go, but ended up agreeing anyway. Jasmine and Rachel's dorm room was packed, as half the people from the mixer crammed themselves into the tiny space. But with the music blasting, it was finally starting to feel like a real party. Sonia and Ish sat snug at a small desk. The conversation overlapped with the pulsing music. As they talked, Sonia felt a spark of excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time. A buzz of energy moved through her, and for the first time during the semester, she felt like a real live college student, genuinely enjoying herself and not wanting the night to end. As spring settled over the city, Sonia and Ish's friendship blossomed, and over the next few weeks, the two settled into an easy rhythm, meeting for lunch between classes and attending all kinds of events together. Ish had become her new constant companion, and she found herself eagerly anticipating their time together. From poetry slams in some dimly lit cafes to attending discussions on religion and philosophy, where they absorbed the lectures. Discussions that ignited a fire within them, leading to passionate debates that continued as they walked around campus after class. Their conversations sometimes lasting late into the night, debates fueled by their new mutual fascinations with their religions, creating a bond between them that seemed to deepen with every conversation. Like Sonia, Ish recently had the urge to get more serious about his religion, saying he needed to get closer to Allah after 4 years of the craziness working in the music industry. Ish never went into detail about any other wild stuff he's seen, but he would get this bewildered look in his eyes, and he just tells Sonia that he saw a lot of dark, twisted stuff. Seated side by side in the massive lecture hall, Sonia and Ish's attention was drawn to the title of the instructor's lesson projected onto an overhead screen: The Power of Positivity.
How many of you have heard of the law of attraction or the power of positivity?
Sonia glanced around at half of the students raising their hands.
Nice. How many of you subscribe to this belief?
The same students raised their hands again. Then the instructor pointed to one of the students and asked,
Please, explain to us what the power of positivity is.
It's simple. If you believe it, you can achieve it.
The white boy said in a joking tone, making the class laugh.
Elaborate a little further for us, please.
Like, if you want to achieve something, or if you want to obtain something, you just gotta speak it into existence. Say you want some money, or if you want to be successful. All you have to do is believe that you already have it, then the universe will hear you and make it happen so that you receive it.
How about you? You raised your hand.
The professor pointed to a girl with light pink hair.
What does it mean to you?
I do affirmations, and I believe that how you think affects your reality. Your thoughts create your life, so you have to think positive thoughts.
The professor pointed to one last student, asking her to share. Then the chubby black girl explained.
I create vision boards. You can put anything you want on there. It helps you to visualize and focus on what you want. You think about it, then you manifest it and make it happen.
Interesting. You really think you can manifest things using only your thoughts?
The professor asked. The girl nodded with a shrug.
Yeah, you really can. I can create whatever I want. All I have to do is speak it into existence.
I thought that was something only God could do.
The girl shook her head.
The power is in all of us because God is in all of us.
Oh, I see. You believe in pantheism.
The girl looked confused.
What's your religion?
I'm a Christian.
The girl said with pride.
Very interesting.
The professor nodded.
So where did you learn about the power of positivity, vision boards, and manifesting your desires through your thoughts?
The girl shrugged.
Do any of you know the origins of these beliefs?
No hands went up.
It's very important to know why you believe what you believe and to find out the origins of those beliefs.
Then the instructor clicked to the next image in her slideshow.
Law of attraction is a new thought belief which suggests that whatever people think, they attract. Your thoughts go out, then they enact some sort of universal law of attraction, bringing positive results. The same applies to negative thoughts. Think negative, you get negative.
She clicked to the next slide, which featured a black and white photo of an old white woman with creepy eyes.
Do any of you know who this woman is?
No one raised their hands.
This is 19th century Russian occultist Helena Blavatsky. She taught that people have the ability to shape their own realities, and her teachings influenced the New Age movement, which became popular in the 60s and 70s. The phrase law of attraction first appeared in her best-selling book, Isis Unveiled. She wrote that by learning to harness the power within ourselves, we can use our power to become the creator of our own realities, allowing us to obtain a higher consciousness and spiritual ascension. She also wrote that we can manifest our own realities because we are our own gods, and that all people are essentially divine.
Itch looked over at Sonia, shaking his head like it all sounded ridiculous. But at that moment, her memory was jogged, and thoughts of her very last interaction with Lucky came to mind. Lucky had been explaining how her thoughts had the power to create her own reality, a lie from the devil. Sonia thought to herself, just as the professor pulled up a slide titled Lucifer.
Some other really interesting beliefs Blavatsky taught can be found in the magazine she published entitled Lucifer.
Sonia felt a chill, shaking her head.
Here are some of her beliefs on Lucifer as published in her writings. Satan is the true creator. Blavatsky proposed that the traditional Christian God is a lesser, limiting force, while Satan, or Lucifer, is the higher, more enlightened creative principle. In her book, The Secret Doctrine, she wrote, "It is Satan who is the God of our planet and the only God." She also taught the belief that Lucifer is the light bringer, quote, "our Redeemer, our intelligent liberator and savior."
The professor stared at the students' shocked faces, then said with a smile,
Congratulations, you've blindly adopted the beliefs of a woman who refers to Satan as the true God and savior of mankind. Now do you see how important it is to know where your beliefs come from?
The pink-haired girl huffed and said,
Just because she believed in that stuff about Lucifer doesn't take away from the fact that her other teachings were true. I'm sure that most of us who believe in the power of positivity don't think that Satan is really God.
She rolled her eyes. Then the professor smiled.
You're right. Let's get back to the doctrine that you do believe in.
She pressed her little clicker and brought up the next slide.
Here is an explanation of where she got the idea for her law of attraction doctrine. She states that she channeled an entity she refers to as Lodger. She writes that the entity Lodger introduced the information of the law of attraction to her.
She looked out at the bewildered students.
With the help of this channel entity, Blavatsky now has countless people believing that they themselves are divine creators, and most people have no idea when or where they even picked up these beliefs. When I first started teaching this class in 1995, only a few students knew anything about the power of positivity and manifesting their own realities. Now, in 2005, it's half the class. I predict that by 2015, the entire class is going to be indoctrinated into this belief. For the students who raised their hands, please write this down for your reference and go and take a look. It's chapter 10 in Blavatsky's book, Isis Unveiled. I urge you to go and take a look at what is essentially your Bible, the foundation of your beliefs,
she said, sarcastically. As Sonia and Ish walked across campus after class, he described his latest project at work, his hands moving expressively as he spoke about working with two of the biggest names in the music industry. And as usual, Sonia found herself captivated by him. Something about Ish was so refreshing and different, yet comforting and familiar. "You going to work after this?" she asked.
Yeah, I got a session with Fabulous.
Nice. You told me you've been trying to work with him for a while now.
Yeah, and I got a lot of other artists lined up too. Things are going real well.
I'm happy for you.
I'm telling you, you should come by the studio one of these days. Watch me work.
The way you talk about how sick and twisted some of those rappers are, I'm afraid to go anywhere near them. She joked.
As long as you're with me, you'll be safe,
He said, with a sexy smile. Sonia laughed, rolling her eyes. Then the two settled onto the sun-warmed granite steps of the library.
So what you think about that nonsense Professor Qureshi was talking about?
Ish asked, his eyes connected with hers. I think she was right. Half those kids believe in that stuff, but don't even know where it came from.
I don't think any of them actually believe in that. They can't really think the universe can hear them and is giving them anything. Like the sun, moon, and stars are really hearing them and just giving out stuff because they thinking it. Allah made the planets and the stars. They worshiping the creation instead of the creator and thinking they can manifest things for themselves. Sound like a bunch of lost people.
He frowned, shaking his head.
And I definitely don't think those crazy beliefs will spread like the professor made it seem. It can't get more popular when people found out where those beliefs came from some lady who actually thought that Lucifer was good.
I think the professor was right. People only care about getting what they want nowadays and doing whatever makes them feel good, even if they forfeit their own souls. Their short time here on Earth is all they seem to care about. Everybody only living for now.
It's still crazy to me that they think they actually can create their own worlds from thoughts.
He shook his head. They really do. I had a friend who thought the same thing, Sonia said in a low tone. She was telling me about how thinking positively creates the positive, taking away the divinity of God and putting herself in his place. Ish laughed a little, shaking his head.
Well, you better hurry up and tell your friend she's following some movement cooked up by some lady who believed in Lucifer.
I did try to tell her that. Before she died, Ish stared over at her. I tried telling her about the power of prayer, the power of God. Tried to warn her about how all these insane beliefs were created to take away from God and lead people away from Jesus.
Sorry to hear about your friend.
It shook his head, looking over at Sonia, whose gaze remained on the ground.
But you were a good friend, trying to reach out to her like you did. I'm trying to do that too, dedicating my time to dawah and spreading the truth of Islam.
He looked over at her with a smile.
That's why I'm not going to let up. And I'm going to get you to come visit my mosque one of these days.
Sonia smiled slightly, shaking her head. I already told you I'm good. Continue trying to convert your people in the music industry because it's not working on me.
Well, you don't want to come? You afraid you're going to hear something that will shake your faith?
No, I just know that what I believe is true, and there's no way I could ever become a Muslim. I love Jesus way too much.
We Muslims love Jesus too, even more than most Christians.
Sonia shot him a look. Come on now, Ish. That is not true.
And it is.
You don't believe that he's God. You take that away from him, which is the most unloving and disrespectful thing you can do.
We hold him in high regard though. Like you, we believe that he was born of a virgin and that he did miracles, raised the dead. Plus, we agree that he's going to return to earth someday and defeat the false Messiah.
Yeah, you can believe all that, but you're taking away the truth about who he is. The entire reason he came to this earth. You disrespect him and you show that you don't really love him by denying that he's God. And by denying that he died so we could be saved.
Sonny, I'm telling you, Jesus was only a prophet. You're worshiping a man, and God doesn't like that. That's a serious sin.
He said with concern, worshiping a man is definitely a serious sin. Jesus is God. He came in the flesh, living amongst humans, and he gave up his life to atone for our sins. He was God in the flesh, not just a prophet like your religion claims.
Why are you so sure that Jesus is God?
Aside from my personal experiences and the fact that only in Jesus have I been able to find peace, is all the actual facts. The documentation from both the Bible and non-believers in the Jewish community who witnessed him performing miracles that only God could perform, like restoring sight and raising the dead. And then there's the fact that he rose himself from the dead.
See, right there is where you're really lost. Jesus never died. They never crucified him.
He was Ish. It's a fact. Documented by all kinds of people living during that time. Not just Christians, but Jewish historians like Josephus and atheist historians like Tacitus, who were alive at the same time as Jesus.
They only think they saw the prophet Jesus get crucified. Allah saved Jesus right before he was about to get killed. Before they tried to put Jesus on the cross, Allah stepped in and just sent Jesus up to be with him. Then Allah just made it seem like Jesus was being crucified. He swapped Jesus with Judas. Then Judas got killed. But Allah made the crowd think it was Jesus.
Ish, that makes no sense, Sonia said gingerly, trying not to let him hear how insane everything he said sounded to her. What reason would your God have to do all that?
Because Allah would never let anybody kill Jesus. He was a great prophet. Judas was a traitor, so he got what he deserved.
But it still doesn't make any sense that Allah would make people think that they were seeing Jesus get crucified. He would just be tricking a bunch of people for no reason. He could have just rescued Jesus and let the crowd see Judas get crucified. Ish shook his head with a shrug.
That's a question for my imam. Come to the mosque and we can get all those questions answered for you.
There's nothing your imam can tell me to make me believe it's the truth.
Sani, don't be so close-minded. Islam is the truth. You're not scared you're being led astray and worshiping the creation instead of the creator, like those kids in our class who are praying to the sun, moon, and stars.
Nope, I'm not worried at all. I believe what my Bible says, that all things were created through him. She smiled, then asked Ish, "You don't ever think that you could be practicing the wrong religion?"
No, not ever.
But didn't Islam start 600 years after Jesus had already died? And your prophet claimed to know the truth about Jesus through some information he received while alone in a cave. That's not reliable proof.
It is, because everything the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon her, received was from Allah.
But didn't he think that he was getting the information from a demon at first? The Quran said that Muhammad became suicidal because he thought it was a demon that had choked him in the cave before telling him about Islam.
Yeah, he thought that it was a demon at first. But after people explained to him that it was more likely Jibril the angel, he understood that the information was from Allah.
Sonia frowned with pity. If his first thought was that it was coming from evil, that doesn't concern you? Make you think that the information could have actually came from something other than God?
No. Why would I be concerned? Like I said, he was mistaken about it being a demon.
But the people who told him that it was an angel weren't even there with him in that cave when he had the experience. He just told them about what happened after the fact, and they just came up with that conclusion. Sonia could see the wheel spinning for Ish, but then he quickly shook his head dismissively. Sonia continued, I'm just saying, the information could have come from something demonic, like Muhammad thought at first. And if my religion was based on the accounts of one single man, who at first thought he was contacted by demons, I would be concerned.
Sonny, I'm not worshiping demons.
He laughed, shaking his head.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was contacted by Allah, the Creator.
And you don't have a problem with the Quran saying that Allah is the best of all deceivers? Ed shook his head no.
I'm going to get you to come to my mosque and speak to my imam. He'll be able to get through you. I'm not giving up on you yet.
He smiled with a nod. Sonia made a face, like she felt sorry for him.
I'm having a party next week, Aaron. A lot of big names in the industry will be there. I want you to come.
I got an event that night, but maybe I can come afterward, Sonia said, admiring Ish's smile. Then Jasmine and her roommate Rachel walked down the steps.
Ish, did I just hear that you're having a party?
Rachel asked. He gave her a nod as she copped a seat on the steps beside him.
Is Fabulous gonna be there?
Rachel's eyes glowed with excitement.
Yup.
I'm invited too, right?
Yeah, you can come.
He smiled with a nod. Sonia stood, joining Jasmine, who was standing on the sidewalk a few feet from the steps, tapping away at her phone.
You on your way to the office?
Jasmine asked, glancing up at Sonia. Yeah.
Cool. We can split a cab.
Jasmine slid her phone into her purse. Then Sonia said to her in a snarky tone, Did you see your roommate all over Ish?
Yeah, those two have been spending time together for weeks now.
What?
Yeah, ever since I introduced him at that thing for the Black Student Union.
Jasmine, why wouldn't you tell me? Sonia asked, voice tight and filled with anger.
I didn't think there was anything to tell. It's not like the two had been hiding it. Besides, you made it seem like you and Ish are just friends.
Yeah, because we are just friends right now. I'm getting to know him. You know, taking it slow. Jasmine saw the pain in Sonia's expression.
Sorry, Sonny. I didn't know all that.
It's whatever. Sonia shrugged, glaring over at Ish, who had caught her stare and was now looking at Sonia with concern. Anger drained from Sonia's face, replaced with sadness, as she said, I thought he was interested in me, but maybe I was mistaken.
Maybe he is interested.
Jasmine shrugged.
Him and Rachel aren't serious. She was complaining about that the other day, saying he's been dragging his feet and only ever wants to talk.
Jasmine laughed.
I explained to her that some guys actually want to get to know you before they try to sleep with you. Not all guys are like the boy she's been bringing up to our room.
She talking to Ish and bringing boys into your doing? Jasmine curled up her lip, nodding.
Yep, a different boy every other day.
She said under her breath, as they both glanced up at Rachel, who was gazing into Ish's eyes. Then Jasmine continued.
So, it's not like it's just her boyfriend. They're just talking. Just talk to him and let him know you want to be exclusive. Y'all will make a cute couple. And like I said, Rachel is not serious about him. Not when she got a whole roster of dudes.
They looked over at the pair who was splitting up on the steps. Rachel walking off and Ish heading down the steps toward them. Before stepping away, Jasmine announced.
I'm going to run up to my room for a minute, but don't leave campus without me. I still want to split their cab.
You about to go to work?
Ish asked. Sonia gave him a stiff nod.
You okay?
Jasmine just told me that you and Rachel have been talking.
Yeah, we have.
He said with a shrug. Sonia was beyond confused. Ish, I know I'm not crazy. Me and you been talking every day for weeks now, and texting each other every night, spending all this time together. I thought you and me had something.
Yeah, we do.
He said like it was obvious.
But I'm getting to know Rachel too.
He said simply, crushing Sonia with his casual tone. So you're just gonna talk to both of us and treat it like this is some sort of competition? See who's worthy to be with you?
That's not it at all.
He smiled sweetly, gazing down at her.
Look, for me, there's no competition for you. You bring something to the table Rachel never could.
He said, with that handsome, perfect smile of his.
And Rachel brings something to the table different from what you can do. It's all luck, though.
Sonia tilted her head to the side, nodding like she finally got it. So you trying to collect a bunch of girls to create a harem for yourself?
I didn't think you would be this upset.
You did, or else you would have been straight up with me instead of sneaking around.
I didn't sneak. Discussing this type of thing with girls too soon can scare them off. I was going to mention it to you when the time was right.
Sonia shook her head in shock, wondering how long that would have been. So you want to date me and Rachel at the same time, and you just want us to be okay with it?
I don't want to just date.
He said it like it was obvious. Then her eyes bugged out as she asked, "You're trying to marry the both of us?"
Look, while I was working in the industry, it was so hard to find any girls with their heads on straight. Now that I'm back in school, I met you and Rach, and I like both of you. Ain't how you all have something different to offer. I'm allowed 4 wives, and I think we could build a strong, supportive family together.
Me, you, and Rachel build a family together. She asked with shock. He nodded. The thought of being in a relationship with Ish and 3 other women made her stomach turn. Ish, you would be the only one happy, and we would be sacrificing our happiness to be with you.
That's not true. You'd be surprised by how much you'd love it if you gave it a chance.
She looked at him like he was crazy.
Sonny, having 4 wives is seen as a blessing, a sign of prosperity. It's about providing, about fulfilling different needs, about family.
And what about my needs? My need for some security, to feel like I'm enough.
You don't think that's a little selfish?
Sonia laughed sarcastically. Ish, you sound like the selfish one. How would you feel if I told you I wanted to add you to my collection? If I told you I wanted to marry you and 3 other men so we could have a family together? He didn't respond, just let out a sigh. You would hate being in constant competition for my affection, always wondering if you measure up against the rest, because that's only natural. Being with a bunch of people in one marriage is only going to benefit one of us, and that would be you. She said in a low tone. I don't want to share a man, and I don't want to compete for his affection either.
Sonny, it's a valid way of life. And if you just be a little open-minded, you might realize that it'll work for you too.
Not for me. I'll wait around until I can find somebody who isn't selfish, somebody with some self-control, and who's secure and faithful enough to be with one person. I want a single commitment, 1 man, 1 woman, 1 family. And if that makes me closed-minded and selfish, then so be it. I'd rather be that than settle for less than I deserve.
Look, you're upset about all this right now because it's still fresh. But Sonny, just think about it.
He said with a pleading look. Chapter 7. That following Saturday, the grand ballroom glittered. Crystal chandeliers dripped with a warm glow that spilled over the sea of impeccably dressed guests. As usual, every detail screamed excellence and give up some money. Another successful event with everybody there having a good time. Everybody but Sonia, that is. She sat at the table, bored and half listening to Jasmine as she picked over her way too sweet dessert.
Rachel just texted me. She said it's all kinds of famous people at Ish's party. We should go.
Jasmine smiled, her eyes wide with excitement. Sonia cocked her head to the side, staring over at her. I'm not going there, and I'm still mad at you for not telling me about her and Ish.
Sorry. And I told you, things aren't even serious between them. Rachel's just looking for a come up with Ish, hoping to meet some of those famous people he's always talking about. Look, I get you not wanting to share him, 'cause I wouldn't either. But in this day and age, it's like we don't even have a choice. Nowadays, boys will be seeing other girls anyway. At least with this setup, you won't be in the dark.
Sonia let out a sigh. I don't want to share a man just because I'm afraid of getting cheated on behind my back. I don't want a man who's divided himself between me and other women, kissing them 1 minute, then coming to me the next. She shook her head. Nah, I'll wait for somebody who's secure enough to be all in with just me, not somebody roaming the streets, looking to add more women to his collection. She turned up her nose. Jasmine smiled and said,
Well, I'm happy you're putting yourself first.
What did Rachel say when she found out?
I don't think she has yet, but I honestly don't think that girl will care.
Jasmine said, rolling her eyes. Then she looked down as her phone buzzed with a text.
Speak of the devil.
Jasmine said, reading the message.
Sunny. She said I should get there soon. She just met that producer, Pitty D. Said he invited her to another party, so she'll be leaving soon.
Sonia laughed to herself, getting a little satisfaction at Rachel skipping out and ditching Ish. Then Jasmine said in a begging tone,
We only have to stay for a little bit. I just want to meet Pitty and maybe see some other stars up close and personal.
Sonia finally agreed. When the girls stepped outside to hail a cab, they ran into Javier, who was grabbing his keys from a valet attendant.
Javier,
Jasmine called out.
You live in Brooklyn, right?
He gave her a nod, confused.
Me and Sunny are going to a party in Dumbo. Do you mind giving us a ride over the bridge?
He gave them a nod before getting into the car. Sonia sat in the back seat, reclining into its plushness, her eyes closing as she leaned her head back. She wasn't looking forward to seeing Ish, and planned on going in for a minute to see the sights and then leave out. As Javier drove toward the bridge, Jasmine mentioned that they were going to a party and told him that he should come too. Sonia figured he turned down the invite, but to her surprise, he quickly agreed.
Boy, you should know that I've got you on my mind. Enjoy the life, baby, take a ride. I just wanna die. I've been watching you. At night, I think of you. I want to be honest. I'm looking for somebody I can call for. Looking for the only one that I can give my all to. All to you. At night, I think of you.
When they stepped into Ish's place, Sonia was confused. Over the last month, Ish had mentioned a few of his collaborations with famous rappers, but she had no idea just how successful he must have been. When she found out that he was returning to school to get his degree, Sonia figured he must have given up on his failed career making beats and was about to get a real job. The outside of Ish's place looked like some random warehouse, but inside, the place looked more like a mansion. Dripping in luxury, it had been gutted and was now filled with fine marble. Marble floors, walls, columns, and the entryway was a wide spiraling staircase leading to the second level. And the foyer was so wide and spacious, you could park a Hummer in there. The furniture looked just as luxurious, and Sonia was sure it costed more than her whole semester's tuition. The place buzzed with the murmur of conversation, competing with a loud yet clear sound system, making the space feel more like a club than a home. Rachel hadn't been exaggerating. Ish's loft was packed wall to wall with stars. Every step they took, there was another familiar face, another rapper, another singer, another model. Jasmine separated from the two after spotting Rachel heading out the door with Petty D. She had taken off quickly to catch them, leaving Sonia and Javier in the thick of the crowd just as Ish stepped over to them.
I didn't think you would come.
Ish's face lit up with a wide smile. Yeah, I decided to stop by real quick. Say hello. Sonia tried to sound as cool as she could. Then, as a partygoer stepped past her, she was pushed up against Javier. She decided to remain pressed against him, using his closeness to her advantage. She smiled slightly, then said in a sweet, airy tone, "I hope you don't mind, but I decided to bring someone." Ish, this is Javier. Javier, this is Ish, a friend from school. She added coldly. Ish looked over at Javier, then said,
Nice to meet you.
Javier gave him a stale nod as he placed a hand onto Sonia's lower back. Sonia looked over at Javier surprised, his eyes connecting with hers as he moved his hand onto her waist. Before she could give it a second thought, Ish was speaking again.
I'm glad you made time to come out and see me. I know you had that big event you were planning. How did it turn out?
It was perfect. We had a real good time, she said as Ish's eyes moved down to Javier's hand, gripping her waist.
You all came here but Jasmine?
Ish asked. Yeah, she's over there with Rachel. Ish watched Jasmine wave goodbye to Rachel, who was leaping out the door, arm in arm with Petty D.
I'll be back in a minute,
Ish said, pushing his way through the crowded living room. Sonia laughed to herself as she watched him hurrying toward the door. Then her attention shifted from Ish to the warm firmness of Javier's hand still gripping her waist and the solidness of his chest still pressed against her side. She stood there confused by the feelings his closeness was stirring up in her. Then, pulling Sonia from her thoughts, Jasmine returned with 2 drinks in her hands.
Ish got the good stuff.
Jasmine smiled, holding out the glass to Sonia. I'm good.
You want it?
She asked Javier. He shook his head.
More for me, I guess.
She laughed, taking a gulp. It didn't take too long for the top shelf liquor to make its way through Jasmine's system. And before they knew it, she was past tipsy, and it was time for the trio to go. Even after they had stepped outside, Sonia could still feel the party music throbbing in her ears. She walked with Jasmine, who was wobbling in her stilettos, her arm flung over Sonia's shoulders for support. The streets of Brooklyn were alive with people enjoying the cool spring night. Jasmine laughed loud, recounting all the stars she'd seen at the party as the three made their way up the block. Then as a cab came racing down the street, Jasmine pulled away from Sonia, stepping off the curb to flag it down. The cab barreled toward her, a blur of yellow, and just when it seemed like she would get clipped, Javier yanked her by her fur shrug, pulling her roughly out of the street.
Yo, what you doing?
Javier asked sternly.
Trying to hail a cab,
she said like it was obvious.
You about to get yourself killed.
Jasmine stumbled, almost landed face first onto the sidewalk, but Javier caught her again. As she regained her balance, a stream of vomit erupted from her mouth. He stepped back, but it was too late. Sonia gasped, clapping her hand over her mouth, never seeing anyone puke so hard in her life. Javier stood there, trying to shake the pinkish-brown chunks from his tailored suit.
I'm so sorry. I ruined your suit,
Jasmine said with a pitiful look like she was about to cry.
Don't worry about it,
he said in a low, annoyed voice. Then Jasmine looked down at her own clothes, finally seeing where the rest of her vomit had landed.
My shirt,
she cried, looking down at her shrug and new chiffon blouse. Sonia shook her head, stepping over to the curb and waving down another approaching cab. As it passed them, Javier said in a reluctant grumble,
I'll take y'all home. I just need to change my clothes first.
Just like Ish's place had thrown Sonia for a loop, Javier's new house was just as surprising. He now stayed in a tall brownstone, right in the heart of Brooklyn Heights. It all felt like a replay of that night 2 years ago, when she had walked into his ridiculously huge apartment in the Bronx. Now the same thought crossed her mind. A 4-story brownstone in one of the best neighborhoods in Brooklyn, right up the street from the river. She just knew he had to be into something shady. As the Javier went upstairs to change, Sonia walked around the huge living room, eyes moving all over the place.
this place is real nice,
Jasmine said, noticing Sonia looking all around at Javier's stuff. It is. I wonder how much this place costs. Sonia mumbled, her eyes moving over the biggest plasma TV she'd ever seen. Then she stepped over to a glossy display case. Inside of it was a sleek chrome sculpture, its surface reflecting the room like a distorted mirror. When Sonia heard the shower running upstairs, she turned to Jasmine and asked, "You work in accounting, which means you do payroll, right?"
Yeah,
Jasmine nodded.
that's how I knew Javier moved to Brooklyn.
"How much does he make?" Jasmine laughed a little and shook her head.
Oh, you trying to get me fired?
"I'm not. Just trying to figure out how he can afford all this." Instead of responding, Jasmine was busy peeling off the vomit-soaked shrug from her shoulders. By the time Javier returned downstairs, freshly showered and dressed in a hoodie and jeans, the girls were watching TV. Jasmine's feet were kicked up on the love seat as she made herself right at home. Javier sat a folded gray sweatshirt beside her, then directed her up the hall to the first floor bathroom. After Jasmine left to change, Sonia said to Javier, "Your place is really nice."
Thanks.
he said simply, sitting beside her on the sofa. It must have cost you a lot of money.
Luis and Rita sold it to me. They gave me a good deal.
So Luis was able to afford a townhouse in Manhattan, a place in the Hamptons, and a brownstone? Sonia asked, trying to sound as innocent as possible. He nodded.
He got most of his money from an inheritance.
An inheritance?
My family owned a sugarcane factory back in Puerto Rico. My grandparents sold it back in the 80s, and their kids inherited the money.
Javier, I know you got a washing machine up in his big house.
Jasmine said, holding her balled-up blouse. Javier stood up, showing her the way. Sonia glanced back, watching them disappear up the hall. Then her phone buzzed in her purse. A text from Nate. Sonia's thumbs tapped away at the keypad as the rumble of the washing machine started up in the basement. A low mechanical rumble that echoed throughout the huge house. Then she heard the sound of their footsteps and Jasmine cracking up as they made their way back toward the living room.
Fanny, let me tell you about this boy. He didn't even know how to use his own washing machine. He said he never even used it before. He's so rich, he has his laundry picked up and washed for him.
Jasmine's eyes were wide in disbelief. Sonia forced a laugh, still staring down at her phone.
Let's watch a movie while we wait for my clothes to wash,
Jasmine suggested, walking over to the DVD tower beside the entertainment system. She ran a finger over the cases, then plucked one out, reading the title.
Why is it that dudes love Scarface so much?
She asked, turning the case over.
Because it's a good movie.
It looks so boring.
You never saw it before?
He asked in disbelief. She shook her head, then Javier told her to put it in. The entire time, Sonia's eyes were glued to her phone as she texted Nate. She only realized that the two had agreed to a movie night after she noticed Javier sitting on the couch beside her, and Jasmine crossing the room, her bare feet patting on the hardwood floor before she curled up in the love seat. What we watching? Sonia asked, closing her phone.
Scarface.
Jasmine replied, tucking her legs beneath herself and curling up into a tight ball.
You ever saw it?
No. Sonia sighed with disinterest as the opening scenes flickered across the large screen. She watched, half listening, half lost in her own thoughts. She glanced at Javier, his face lit by the glow of the television and his expression intense. The TV's blue glow illuminated half his handsome face while leaving the other side in darkness, making his scar seem to vanish, then reappear with each scene change. By the time Tony Montana was soaking in a bubble bath and puffing on a cigar, Jasmine was fast asleep. Javier went downstairs to toss her clothes into the dryer. Then when he came back, Sonia was nodding off too.
Yo, don't fall asleep now. You'll miss the best part.
He remarked, returning to the couch. How long is this movie? She let out an annoyed sigh.
3 hours.
Why would a movie ever need to be 3 hours long? She said, sitting up, heavy-eyed as she watched Tony Montana descend further into coke-fueled madness. She glanced over at Javier, who was staring at the screen intently again. She noticed that after Javier had returned from the basement, he was sitting even closer beside her. So close, there was barely any space between them, and she could smell the scent of soap on his freshly showered skin. Her eyes floated down to his hand, resting on the sofa and the small space between them. Big, strong-looking hands, the color of smooth butterscotch. Those same feelings she had at the party earlier were back. The rush she felt as the two stood close together, his hand resting on her waist and body close up against hers. She forced her gaze back over to the TV, trying to get those weird new feelings in check. But she felt it. The familiar feeling of a crush was fluttering in her heart. Scarface played on, a blur of motion and sound, but it might as well have been static on the screen, because she wasn't paying attention. Everything felt different now. She sat stiffly, all of a sudden nervous, her eyes moving over to his neatly trimmed beard, coarse shiny hair that made him look powerful and mature. Noticing Sonia's stare, Javier asked,
"You good?"
She gave him a nod, then, trying to play it off, she said, "My PI texts me. He's pretty sure Blue is in Michigan, in some city called Dearborn." Then Javier asked in a hushed tone,
"He got an address?"
"I didn't ask him, but I don't think so."
"See if he can get it for me."
Sonia shook her head slowly. "You want to go after him." Javier's eyes moved over to Jasmine, who was still fast asleep.
"Let me talk to you in another room for a minute."
Javier said in a low tone, standing up. As they stood at the kitchen island, Javier said,
"You need to get Blue's address from your PI.
"Not if you're gonna try to hunt him down."
If you didn't want me to go after him, why you giving me updates on his location?"
"Because I figured you were gonna know. I know you must be looking over your shoulder, waiting for him to make another move."
"You okay with him being free?"
"He's in a whole nother state, and the investigator said that the cops are building a really good case."
"How long that's gonna take?"
Sonia looked away from him, not willing to budge. Then, out of nowhere, the dryer's buzzer rang out aggressively from the basement, cutting off their conversation and snapping Jasmine from her sleep. Luis's annual charity auction was in full swing, as guests mingled on the perfectly manicured lawn of his sprawling Hamptons estate. Live music played as guests wandered through the grounds, admiring the lush gardens and breathtaking ocean views. Despite the strategically placed fire pits and heat lamps, the cold spring afternoon breeze moved off the ocean, sending a chill across the party, a reminder that summer was still months away. As the same old crowd of wealthy donors rubbed shoulders with celebrities and politicians, Sonia stood near a fire pit, sipping champagne and half listening to Jasmine, as she filled Sonia in on Rachel and Ish's new relationship status. Sonia looked over at her puzzled. They together now? I thought she left the party with Pity D last week.
Yeah, Rachel said he was pissed. She told him that she didn't even know he was into her like that. But anyway, they're official now. And Ish made it clear that he doesn't want her dealing with any other dudes.
So he knows about all the boys she was bringing up to your dorm room?
I don't think so. Probably just thinks she hooked up with Pity. But honestly, who knows? The both of them are doing the most.
Jasmine laughed. Then her smile faded when she noticed Sonia's serious expression.
Sorry it didn't work out with him. I know how much you like Ish.
I could really care less. Sonia shrugged, her eyes floating over to Javier. She had been stealing glances at him all night. After Ish's party last week, Javier had been heavy on her mind. She had looked forward to seeing him at work during the week, but he had been MIA. Now there he was, standing with his uncle and a bunch of other men in suits. Jasmine turned around, following her gaze, and looking over at Javier.
Oh, I can see why you don't care about Ish and Rachel.
What?
You like Javier.
Sonia rolled her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about.
You've been showing up to work all week with your hair done all of a sudden and wearing a bunch of new cute clothes.
Jasmine grinned. Whatever, Jazz.
I think y'all would make a cute couple.
Nah, Sonia said, making a face.
You over here staring at him, but too scared to make a move?
There's no move to be made. He's friends with my ex. Nothing is going to happen. The realization sank in, and her voice lower in disappointment. As the sun was beginning to set and the temperature dropped, the party wound down and the crowd started thinning out. Sonia helped the staff clean the grounds. She was kneeling down on all fours beside the pool, dipping her hand into the glowing water and trying to scoop out a plastic cup.
What you doing?
Javier asked, stepping over. Somebody knocked a cup into the pool. She sighed as her hair dragged across the water surface.
Yo, get up. You think your hair wet?
He helped her up from the ground. Sonia brushed the specks of dirt from her elbow and knees as Javier knelt down, reaching his long arm across the water and scooping the cup up with ease. Then, as Sonia rubbed her damp hair, she sighed and said, I'm gonna look a mess.
You look good.
He assured her, leaning close and tucking the wet strands behind her ear, his fingertips grazing the side of her neck. The quick caress gave Sonia chills, and she couldn't help but smile. You staying in the Hamptons for the weekend, or are you driving back to Brooklyn? She asked. Just as he opened his mouth to answer, they were interrupted.
Javier,
Louise called from across the yard.
I want to introduce you to some very important people.
After collecting the last of the empty cups and stray plates, Sonia sat at the kitchen island, watching the catering staff pack up their supplies. The distant murmur of party guests faded as one by one they left the auction, leaving only a small group in the yard. Then Jasmine sashayed through the patio doors, doing her little Midwest two-step as the jazz band rocked up their last set.
The night is finally over,
Jasmine said with relief.
We should go into town and see what kind of nightlife they got out here in the Hamptons. I bet all the clubs here are fancy and nice.
I don't think they have a nightlife out here. Rita made it seem like the town usually shuts down the night, and the only parties are the ones the residents throw. Jasmine's face balled up in disappointment.
I was looking forward to going out tonight. I thought the Hamptons was going to be fun. All those famous people are always talking about it, like it's so amazing.
I think they like it for the peace, the nature and everything.
If I wanted peace, I could have went home to Indiana. Wasted my spring break coming to this boring town.
You want to go back to the city early?
I don't know. It would be nice to stay up in a mansion.
She smiled, looking around the palatial kitchen.
Having all my meals prepared for me. Why do you ask, though? You trying to go back to the city?
No, not at all. I like it out here. The peace and quiet.
Girls, I need your help.
Rita said, bursting through the patio doors.
Sonia, please fill one of those ice buckets. And Jasmine, grab a tray of glasses for the guests.
She said, pulling a bottle of champagne from the fridge. What's the celebration? Sonia asked, scooping ice from a huge styrofoam cooler.
Things went so well today. We raised more money than the last 3 years combined.
Rita laughed, more giddy than Sonia had ever seen her before. After Rita jammed the bottle of champagne into the ice bucket, she rushed outside with a stray waiter, hurrying over to Louise, Javier, and 3 other men. Jasmine picked up one of the many chocolate-covered strawberries, then asked,
Why do you always order so many of these things? Nobody ever eats them, and we have a bunch left over at the end of the night.
Because I like them, and so does my mother. She laughed, watching Jasmine as she peeled the chocolate shell off the strawberry, eating it plain. Then, when Sonia returned her gaze out to the backyard, Luis and Javier were clinking champagne glasses with the Suda men in celebration. Rita said they made more money tonight than the last 3 years combined. Are you able to tell me how much they made?
Yeah, fundraising amounts are public information. It's the salaries I can't tell you about.
Jasmine laughed.
50 million.
She had said the amount so casually, Sonia thought she had misheard her. What? Jasmine nodded, chomping away. What can Louise possibly do with so much?
TV and radio commercials do add up.
She shrugged.
But yeah, I guess that is still a crazy amount.
Who spent so much money bidding on art and old antiques? Jasmine pointed over to the 3 men standing with Luis and Javier. Who are they?
That little bald man is an investment banker. He donated 10 million. The fat man with the red hair, he donated 10 million. And so did the other one, but I'm not sure who he is.
She said, referring to some dark-haired man.
Yep, those 3 put up the most money. The rest came from a bunch of smaller bids we got from donors over the phone.
Sonia's eyes moved from the 3 nameless men to Javier, who was now making his way toward the house.
Javier's coming this way,
Jasmine announced, with her mouth full. A flutter of nervousness tightened in Sonia's stomach as she quickly adjusted the strap of her dress and smoothed a stray strand of hair. Javier strode into the kitchen, heading toward the island, his movements fluid and unhurried.
Hey, Javier.
Jasmine called out, gesturing at the platter of strawberries.
Sonny ordered way too many of these again. You want some?
He shook his head, pausing at the island, his eyes sweeping over the spread of food and drinks, grabbing a bottle of mineral water. You staying here for the weekend? Sonia finally spoke.
Nah, I'm about to head back to the city.
Sonny, weren't you just saying how you wanted to head back tonight too? Maybe you could ride back with Javier.
Sonia shot her a look.
You want to ride back?
Javier asked. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Just give me a few minutes.
She gave him a nod. Then he returned to the backyard. Once the patio doors were closed tight behind him, Sonia slapped Jasmine's arm and the girls started cracking up. Girl, why did you do that? Sonia asked with wide eyes.
I think what you meant to say was thank you. Acting like you not happy when you can't stop cheating her.
The daylight was fading fast as Sonia and Javier took off from the Hamptons. The soulful loops of Naz's New York State of Mind fell in the car as they drove up the dark rural streets. Where you been all week? Sonia asked, her voice barely audible over the music. Javier turned down the volume, asking her what she said. I asked where you been. I ain't see you at work all week.
Had some business to take care of out of the orders,
he said simply. Silence filled the car again. Thanks for giving me a ride back to the city.
You going to church tomorrow or something?
No. Sonia paused, then said like she was just realizing it. I haven't been to church in so long. I meant to start going again after that experience at the airport I was telling you about. But then Lucky died right before I was going to go back. Then school started, and I just never went. I'm going to start going again. I'll probably go tomorrow. Then, smiling slightly, she said, Why'd you ask about church? You want to come with me?
Nah.
He said, shaking his head. Well, if you ever change your mind, you're invited to come.
That's probably not going to happen. I don't believe in all that.
So that day I told you about my dream, my experience at the airport and with the cabbie, none of that gave you any hope that Jesus is real and one day he'll be back? He shook his head.
You just seem so happy. It was nice to see you feeling better.
Sonia let out a sigh. Nobody she spoke to about those experiences that moved her so much took any of it seriously. There was silence again. Then Javier asked her,
Did you get Blue's address from your PI?
No, Javier. She sighed.
Why you say it like that?
Because you're still trying to find Blue. Even after everything that happened last time? She turned to him and asked, You're not scared of getting yourself killed when you just go after people like that?
No.
He said simply.
We all gotta die sometime.
Sonia stared over at him in disbelief. If you don't believe in God, what do you think is gonna happen after you die?
Nothing. Everything will just go black, and it'll all be over.
That's so sad. He shrugged, his eyes focused on the road as the buckets of rain started hammering down onto the car out of nowhere. Javier's windshield wipers went crazy, fighting against the downpour. Then they suddenly came up to a roadblock. A heavy-set man in a neon construction vest was standing in front of the blocked-off road, waving glowing sticks and signaling for Javier to turn to the right. Now they would detour and driving down a dark back road in the middle of a crazy storm. You know how to get back to the city from here?
Nah, but I could figure it out.
He said confidently. 2 hours later, the storm was raging on and they had no idea where they were. As Javier found his way onto a main street, something about the place looked familiar to Sonia. Turn right at the stop sign.
What's over here?
He asked as they pulled onto a residential street. My grandmother's house. Sonia smiled. As soon as they pulled into the driveway of a small and somewhat raggedy house, the storm finally eased up a little. Everything turning all peaceful and still as they climbed out of the car and stepped onto the porch. After opening the front door, Mildred's eyes widened with a look of stunned surprise.
Sonny, is that you?
She smiled, pulling her granddaughter into a tight hug. Hey, Granny. Sonia hugged her back.
Come here,
Mildred said, stepping back so the two could enter. Inside the house, everything seemed the same as the last time Sonia had visited during the summer of her 9th grade year. Same worn-out furniture and threadbare carpets with plastic runners.
What you doing all the way out here in Hempstead?
Me and my friend got lost. Then I just recognized the neighborhood. Mildred stepped back with her hands on her hip, her eyes moving over Javier. Then she said with a smirk,
Introduce me to your friend.
Granny, this is Javier. Javier, this is my grandmother, Mrs. Boyd.
Nice to meet you.
Javier smiled at the silver-haired lady.
Nice to meet you too.
Noticing her grandmother's shiny gold jacket and purple bejeweled t-shirt, Sonia asked, Were you on your way to bingo?
Yeah, Geraldine is coming to pick me up. She was trying to wait until the storm passed by. I'll call her and tell her not to even bother. I can go to bingo another day.
She said, then motioned for them to have a seat. Sonia and Javier sat on the sofa, listening as Noche spoke on the phone, telling her friend to go to bingo without her.
Nope, I can't go. My grandbaby came by to see me. No, not him. Sonny, Gary's daughter. Yeah, came by with her friend.
Mildred laughed a little. Then the three sat down at the kitchen table eating leftover chili as the thunderstorm rolled back in. Strong wind and rain pelted the old windows, making them shake. After they were full on spicy chili and buttery cornbread, Sonia cleared the table and helped her grandmother wash the dishes. With the women in the kitchen cleaning and catching up, Javier returned to the living room, where his eyes were instantly drawn to some photos on the fireplace. A violent crack of thunder shook the house as Javier stepped over and picked up the photo. He stared down at it. Little Sonia perched on her father's shoulders, grinning wide and showing off her missing front tooth. Then his gaze settled on Gary's face, and Javier's heart began to pound, a wave of uneasiness settling in his stomach. Mildred stepped up beside him, peering down at the photo in his hand.
That's my son Gary, Sonia's father.
Then, beaming with pride, she said,
He was my youngest, but he was the most responsible and the sweetest of all my boys.
Her painful smile had Javier's stomach tight with guilt. Then, trying to change the subject, Javier asked,
How many kids do you have?
I had 3 boys. 2 are grown now. My oldest, Larry, passed away 10 years ago. Then Gary, back in 2003. Now it's just me and my middle child, Terrence.
She said with a nod. Then, with sincerity, Javier said,
I'm really sorry for your loss.
She saw the anguish in Javier's eyes, then patted his arm gently.
Being without them is so hard, but I believe in Jesus Christ. I know that this isn't the only life there is. My boys love the Lord, and that brings me more comfort than most people can understand.
She was smiling like a proud mom at graduation day.
And I look forward to the day when I'm reunited with my babies. We'll dwell with God where there's no more pain or loss.
After Sonia finished putting away the dishes, Javier was no longer in the house. She found him out on the porch, staring off into space. You all right? You ready to head out?
The storm is still bad, and it's already late. I figured maybe we could just stay here tonight. You could spend some more time with your grandmother.
He said with a slight smile. You serious? You don't mind?
Nah, not at all.
Yeah, I would love to stay. She nodded with a smile that quickly faded as she noticed his intense expression. You all right?
Yeah.
He gave her a reassuring nod as even more thunder rang out. I haven't been out here to visit in so long. I feel so bad only showing up because we got lost, she said, leaning against the porch banister. I used to come here every year for spring break when I was younger, and for summer vacations too. My granny would watch me while my parents worked, but I haven't seen her since my father died. Javier looked away from her, lowering his eyes. Then Mildred opened the screen door.
Y'all two, get back in this house before you get struck by lightning,
she said, waving them back in. Later that night, after Mildred had turned in, Sonia returned downstairs, dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, and holding a folded-up blanket and pillow for Javier. Thanks again for offering to stay overnight, she said, placing the bedding onto the sofa beside him.
It's nothing.
Sonia smiled wide, sitting on the couch beside him. I don't think it was a coincidence that we made all those wrong turns and ended up here.
Me either,
he said with a small smile. Sonia grabbed up the remote, then began flipping through the few channels available on her granny's old TV. But with only 8 channels and it being so late at night, nothing was on. She flipped to the never funny Saturday Night Live, then opened her phone, tapping away at the keypad.
Is that your PR?
Javier asked her. Sonia let out a light sigh. No, Javier, and I'm not asking him for Blue's address.
Be easy. I don't want that anymore.
You don't? She asked with surprise.
Nah. Like you said, he left town already. We should just let the cops take care of it.
He said in a low tone. Sonia smiled a little, then announced, "This is Jasmine I'm texting. She said the power went out at your uncle's place a few hours ago, but the lights just came back on."
The thing you left there.
Right. Sonia smiled, texting away. Then, after a short stretch of silence, Javier asked out of nowhere,
Who was that kid you was talking to at the party last week?
Ish. He's the one who threw the party, she said, finally looking up from her phone.
Nah. I mean, who is he to you?
Javier leaned forward, his voice low. Just a friend from school.
A friend from school who you was trying to make jealous?
Javier asked, his eyes never leaving hers. I wasn't trying to make him jealous.
So you was pushing up on me for no reason at all?
He asked, his eyes tracing the line of her jaw. Pushing up on you? I don't know what you're talking about. He gave her a doubtful stare.
Any other time I see you, you running away from me like I'm some kind of monster. Then all of a sudden, you all pressed up against me.
That party was crowded, and I don't run away from you.
You do. At work, at the galas, you see me and you take off. Ever since I first met you, you act like me you got some type of problem. Looking at me like you hate me or something.
That's not true.
It's not. I heard you and Eb talking back at the party at my old place, talking about how I killed my own mother, how I got the scar because she cut me.
Yanni told us that, and we never believed any of it. She looked away from Javier's intense eyes. The TV had faded into background noise, just mumbled dialogue and occasional laughter that neither of them was paying any attention to. They sat in silence as SNL finally went off and Showtime at the Apollo came on. The signs between them felt indifferent now, charged with something they couldn't name. Sonia glanced over at him again, suddenly noticing the narrowing space between them on the couch and wondering when they had drifted so close together. Then, before Sonia knew it, Javier was shifting in his seat, and she felt the warmth of his arm pressed against hers. It was just a light touch, but to Sonia, it felt like a lightning bolt shooting through her, an electric charge filling her with some sort of buzz. Then it was like the world paused, as Javier leaned in, closing the already small gap between them. His hand moving onto her thigh, as his lips floated over to hers. Sonia's eyes fluttered shut, as she was suddenly filled with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Javier pressed his mouth against hers, sucking and biting her lips gently, savoring the pillowy softness. Then he slipped his tongue against hers, kissing her so softly, just like he wanted to do for so long. Like he had never kissed any girl before. All those feelings that had been simmering inside of him, finally bubbling up to the surface and spilling out all at once. Sonia was surprised by his kiss. It wasn't passionate or over the top, but something that felt more real, more intimate, and making Sonia melt. In that moment, it felt like the rest of the world just faded away and nothing else mattered at all. Just as she began to lose herself in the moment, Javier pulled away slightly, his chest still pressed against hers as he stared into Sonia's eyes. He didn't speak, just slid his hands onto the sides of her neck, looking into her eyes like he was taking her in. Then, with his strong grip, he put her close, returning his mouth to hers. As their kiss intensified, Sonia slowly leaned back, allowing Javier to move on top of her, his weight pressing down on her as they plunged headfirst into the unknown, both of them oblivious to the storm they were about to unleash, a storm that would shatter their world and lead to heartbreak and tragedy.